Lastly, the disorganized attachment style. This develops when the caregiver is disorganized in the way they behave towards the child. This can look like sometimes abusing the child, be it physical or be it with words, and then maybe immediately showing them after. It's very common to see a child being beaten in the name of discipline, and then immediately after we see the parent go like "Basibuela," so sometimes that in the long run ends up bringing about the disorganized attachment style in a child. And later on I'll discuss how this can look like in the adult life of someone who has the disorganized attachment. Now let's look at the impact that these attachment styles have on adult relationships. So for the secure attachment style, in a relationship, since the one who has the secure attachment, or if say for example both husband and wife, or be it a relationship at work with your co-workers, if you have the secure attachment in your relationship as an adult, it might look like having open discussions. It doesn't mean that you don't have conflict, but the way you resolve your conflicts, it comes from a place of trust that you'll be okay whatever the outcome, and you are open to hear other people's opinions, as well as you are able and free to express your own opinions, understanding that they might take it a different way, and that is okay. You understand that at the end of the day, everyone is responsible for their own emotions, and everyone is allowed to have an emotional reaction or response, and you do not need to manipulate or control how they perceive you, how they perceive the whole situation, but you can be honest, and you can trust that at the end of the day that your authenticity is more about you than it is about them. In the anxious attachment style, so the adult relationships might look like, as I explained, where the person controls the whole situation, because since you are unsure of how people perceive you, you might want to control the outcome, you might want to control their perception of you. So that might look like over explaining yourself when simply you just needed to say yes or no. But when someone asks you, you continuously give them a whole paragraph of trying to explain yourself, because you're trying to control how they perceive you, and you're afraid of being abandoned, and so you do anything to make sure that they accept you. It might look like people pleasing, it might look like failing to say no even though it makes you uncomfortable, because you are anxious and you really need to be accepted. And for the avoidant attachment style, this might look like someone who will constantly avoid things. They will avoid conflicts, they will avoid anything that might bring out certain emotions that they may have buried deep. It might look like being overly independent, not seeking out help when there is need to be help, because it might show that they're weak, and they're trying to show that because since in their childhood they were not allowed to express their emotions safely, so they will try and portray a strong or an independent persona, when deep down they know that they need to get the help that they need to get. So sometimes this might even look like, in conflicts, this might look like shutting down or not being responsive, or stepping away and not really looking to come back to the conversation. Or sometimes it might even look like turning things around, where the person who's bringing about the conflict, or you might be projecting onto them, so that the problem is that person and not yourself, because you do not want to have to experience those deep hidden emotions that were taken as those to be unsafe when you were a child, when you tried to express them. For the disorganized attachment style, as an adult, this might look like, especially in relationships, this might look like people who stay in an abusive relationship. I know I've heard of so many stories where people will be like, why would she still stay in such a toxic or such an abusive relationship? The thing is, this pattern was developed when they were a child, where their parent or their caregiver or whoever had the most influence in their life constantly showed them abuse and then love, abuse and then love. So to them it becomes a norm where they will constantly attract people who will do the same thing, where they will give them, it's some sort of like an addiction per se, where they will look for something that is like that, where they will be abused, be it physically or be it emotionally, knowing that at the end of it they're going to get some form of affection or love. So that's basically what a disorganized attachment might look like in the adult life, or it might look like you seeming to be into a relationship and then not wanting to be in the relationship again. It's like you're hot and cold, you're like on and off, you're basically disorganized, where you say something else and you're doing something totally different. All right, so now that you're aware of all these attachment styles, and probably maybe you have recognized some patterns in yourself and you'd want to make a change, make a shift, how do you go about it? There's so many tests online that you can do that can guide you to find out your attachment styles, or you can basically just observe yourself, how you are in different relationships. I often find that this is my personal experience. I often find that in some relationships I am anxious, in some relationships I'm avoidant, in some relationships I'm disorganized. So because of that, in most cases I tend to do a self-audit and find out why I'm basically maybe feeling avoidant with a certain person, or maybe I'm feeling a bit disorganized with someone, or maybe I'm feeling a bit anxious with someone. But overall, for me, in my love relationship, I found out that I am mostly anxious, and because of that, first thing that one needs to know is to be self-aware of their attachment style in whatever relationship that they may be in, and then from there you can start working towards being more secure within yourself, within that relationship. So for example, if you're someone who's anxious, you want to find out what exactly about that relationship is making you anxious. Why do you fear being abandoned by that person? And you need to now start learning how to communicate in ways that the other person might be able to understand you. I say this because sometimes as an anxiously attached person, you end up going to an avoidant and communicating to them in an anxiously attached way, which only makes them avoid you even more. So you need to understand that as an anxiously attached person, you have a different way through which you receive information, as well as the avoidant also has their own way through which they will receive different feedback. So you need to find out how best you can communicate your needs and how best you can receive, because sometimes we can communicate our needs but we may be resistant to receiving those very needs that we're seeking. And likewise, you need to also find out what attachment style your partner has, and how best you can approach them in terms of how you want to resolve a conflict. Because if you do not know how best to approach them, and you do not know how best to